Alrighty, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to, as I'm getting and checking the messages here, yes, there was a premature launch of the stream. Happens to older guys here. So, but anyways, welcome to tonight's episode of Communications and Cigars. I am your host, John Crook. Thank you for actually coming back, checking back. We were gone last week. That's correct. We were gone last week. We were busy, tied up on a few things, and you know what? Happens to the best of us, but needed a little bit of a vacation. It kind of was a nice little reprieve, if anything, on there. And, so it was kind of nice, but we're back. No, we did not get banned. No, the government is not investigating my house with all the antennas and a few other of the messages I just received on there. No, like I said, last week we were just tied up. Sometimes, family stuff and everything takes place, and guess what? That's what ends up happening on there. But we are back tonight, and then, of course, as we were getting ready for tonight's show, which is going to require us to take a look at some websites, guess what ended up happening? Somehow, we launched, once again, prematurely, and from that point there, as we went along, and we were like, oh, shoot, and all of a sudden we got a notice saying, hey, we're streaming, and I was like, oh, no, and then we tried to stop streaming, and, well, then, next thing you know is, guess what? We were back. Let's just put it that way. So, good evening. Tonight's episode, or for this week's episode, is going to be scanners, the history, what to scan, kind of just everything in general. And the reason that I kind of came up with this one is largely based on the fact that you can have a lot of fun with scanners. There still is a lot of stuff to monitor. There still is a lot of stuff to actually do and take part in scanning. But a lot of people don't think that there is, but there really is. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight on there. What else? Let's talk about our cigar portion here real quick tonight. Of course, Communications Cigars. When we have it, we sit back, we talk about communications, and then we can sometimes enjoy a cigar. So one of the biggest things I will go ahead and talk about tonight as kind of the cigar portion of there is a danger that actually can really happen, which deals with actually getting, I call them cigar bugs. Now, I'm sure there's probably other little sort of names and stuff like that to it there, but there are sometimes little bugs that can get into cigar, depending on where you got the cigar, how was it wrapped, how was it, all that kind of stuff like that on there. And what happens then is that sometimes in your environment, your perfectly controlled, humid controlled, temperature controlled environment, what will start to happen is if you ever start to notice, you take a cigar and you notice there's tiny little holes, almost look like little pinholes in the cigar. That could be a sign that you have little bugs that were in the wrapping of the cigar. And in that case, I would not smoke that cigar. I would go ahead and get rid of it right away. But more importantly, you may have a problem, because if it's on the one cigar, then you go ahead and get rid of them. And cigar beetles is what, thank you, Ape, for on there. And they're not cool. They can easily spread. They're kind of like, if you want to put it to analogy, they're kind of like the bed bugs of a humidor or the cigar world. You do get them on there, you're pretty much gonna throw away all of your cigars unless you happen to have them like in a sealed glass tube. I know some people get cigars like that. I have a few myself on there. That cap is on there. It's nice and sealed. That's fine. But even anything in that plastic wrapper, even if it's in a humidor box, sometimes the cigars will come in a box. I put my boxes directly in my humidor. I don't normally take them out. Even then, you gotta assume, boom, they're done. But I call them cigar bugs because it's like bed bugs on there. But that's your tip. And the reason I bring it up this time of the year is because lots of countries that are starting to make cigars, it kind of comes into the springtime where a lot of this tobacco product from the winter time that they're growing are getting into it. There's going to be more production of tobacco that usually happens in the spring into the summer months on there, and some of these temperate climate zones and everything like that on there. And I'll tell you, it's just one of those things where you got to look careful for it. I have personally, knock on wood, have never had any sort of cigar beetles, tobacco beetles, tobacco bugs, once again, depending on what it is. Never have had that, thank God, in my life. But reading that I've done is people have said it's just, you just got to waste them. Just absolutely waste them whatsoever on there. Next week, I actually have a funny story, which I'm going to save for next week. It's an actually funny little story analogy about a sort of a person who had some, what do we want to say? Dealing with some old cigars. We'll bring that up next week. I think it's kind of a little funny anecdotal. With that, I see a bunch of people in the chat. Let me hop in there and always say hello to the people in the chat that are posting on there. Once again, before you get there, some people are saying, hey, I can't post on there. I can't do in the comments section or anything like that. Well, we did have to go ahead and turn on subscriber. We obviously are popular enough, I guess we could say for sake of a better term, that we're getting botted. And I was thinking maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had a lot of bots coming in. Now you have to subscribe to the channel. And then you have to do that. The bots don't usually go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Thank goodness on there. So we have Evan, good evening. Plaza Storm 73, good evening. Hey, KK6USY, Chuck, good evening. Scout 75, hey, hope you're not getting too much bad weather up there. And then of course, we have the Smoking Ape, who, by just definition, he bailed me out there saying there were beetles, because I would hope the Smoking Ape knows what to talk about when it comes to cigars. We have Robert Imber. W8RRI. I guess I can't read over the weekend here. Tom DeSanti, hey, thank you for checking in on there too. And Christopher Cocoon, Christopher, I'm sorry I slaughtered your last name. I did not mean that, but thank you for that. And of course, we have Phil. Thank you very, very much for checking in. So, getting into tonight's episode, why am I talking about scanners? And Ben Manley, good evening for jumping there. Okay. Why am I talking about scanners? Well, you know what? Actually, you know what? I'm getting ahead of myself. See, you take a week off, you forget how to do anything. Hey, here's the email, communications-cigars@jjkcom.com. So once again, communications-cigars@jjkcom.com. So JJK Communications is a sponsor of the channel here. We do appreciate them for going ahead and being able to provide some of the electronics and stuff like that for us. It makes it also too that I don't necessarily have to go out and kind of start to solicit or do jobs or do things in order to raise money there. So we do appreciate that on there. They also are allowing us right now to use an email through them. But why do we need an email? Why do I want you to contact me? I am going to be looking for specialists. I am looking for people. I'm looking for upcoming episodes. That's correct. Do you want to be a guest host on one of our episodes of Communications Cigars? If you are familiar with CB radios, if you are familiar with Marine band radios, or you have something that you are especially in tuned or know something about in the communication fields, guess what? I would like to have you on the show. Yes, that's right. This is your chance to have YouTube stardom fame on a tiny little channel. Who knows where it can go from there? But Communications Cigars is about a community, about being able to talk and discuss about communications on there. I know I don't know it all. I've never said I know it all except to my wife, but otherwise than that, hey, I can always use some help on there. So if you are interested, drop me a line on there. We can talk, we can discuss. I keep everything confidential. We did put a form out if you were interested on a couple of episodes before. So, don't be afraid to email me and say, hey, let's discuss, let's talk about this on there, because I think that's kind of a great thing to have, in regards to a whole community that is on there. Alrighty, so getting into what we're talking about tonight, we're talking about, once again, the core of things on there. The core of things on there is, of course, dealing with scanners. Now, scanners are a really cool thing, and a lot of people don't realize or know, hey, people are like, well, where did scanners come from? Well, scanners came from basically the need or the want to be able to listen to communications. Now, most people associate, and I say most people, associate scanner usage in the history of it with listening to public safety. That's part of it, okay, really part of it, but there's a lot of things to scanners that people do besides listening to public safety. I was going to say do besides listening, but no, there's a lot that can recently, or that recently has kind of started to come back and was like, why do we have scanners? Why do we listen to this? Why do we do this and this? And really it kind of came down is because we wanted to be able to listen. Now, this kind of goes into a little bit of a subject, which I'll touch on a little bit later, is why use a radio versus a scanner. And there's a lot of different reasons on there, but talking about that, the history of scanning is actually kind of interesting. I did some research, I've looked on it and stuff, and really what it was actually for agencies to be able to listen to agencies from somewhat without having a radio. Because if you go back, scanners have been around since, like, I joke around, the dawn of like crystals. If you have, and I know some people listening or some people that will watch this afterwards will go ahead and say, God, yeah, I did have a scan. You know, I had a Regency scanner that had crystal controls. I had a realistic scanner that had crystals in there. And I remember, man, you needed to have a crystal controlled scanner. You needed to take that scanner. You needed to go down to Radio Shack or wherever you could get the crystals for it and ask which ones you wanted. And they were received crystals. Now, crystals were basically that. They were tuned crystals to the certain frequencies, and you needed to select which one that you had. Now, the nice part about crystal controlled scanning was, for the most part, is you knew what the frequency was that you were going to be using because you went to your local Radio Shack, you went to wherever you needed to do, is you could actually go in and say, you know, hey, Mr. Radio Shack salesman, and this is back in the time of Radio Shack news, Radio Shack stuff. Sorry, Radio Shack. But you could go in there and you could say, listen, I want to listen to my local law enforcement, I want to listen to my local fire department, and I want to listen to my local hospital. All right, fine. They went back in there, they would go ahead and take a look and blah, 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 blah. And next thing you know is that they would say, okay, you need this crystal for your law enforcement, you need this crystal for your fire departments, and then you need this crystal for your hospital. Now, the nice thing about it was that a lot of the channels were duplicate. So, like, for an example, in the United States, once again, in the United States, they have a channel which is now known as VMED 28. It's 155.3400 megahertz. All the hospitals, in essence, in the United States are supposed to have that frequency. It's a nationwide VMED, VHF medical, that's what VMED stands for you to go ahead and be able to have that frequency and listen to all the hospitals. In all my travels, between the Midwest, on the East Coast, on the West Coast, everywhere, I usually can turn and have VMED 28 and hear some sort of traffic on there. Now, more hospitals and situations are going to use that hospital or that frequency than other hospitals on there. But that was the nice part about some of the frequencies. Now, if we also look, is that when people were using those crystals, the scanners at that time didn't have all these super fun stuff on there and everything like that. They didn't have CTCS, or what they call PL decode and DPL and fire tone out and trunking and digital and blah, blah, blah. No, it was basically an expensive box. And depending on what you bought or how you bought it, you may or may not have had crystals included in it. 9 times out of 10, crystals were not included in it. So what would have to happen is that you would buy the scanner, and let's say it was a 10 channel. And what we mean by 10 channel is like the old dots that would scan across. Okay. And what would happen is that you would have these, dots on there, and each one of those dots represented a channel, a crystal, for sake of a better term. And what would happen then in that case is that, hey, guess what? That would be a crystal in there. Now I'm going to pull up an image here, if I could pull it up here real quick. And so here we go. I'm going to pull up an old scanner image, if things will go right here in my research. And let me pull up the website here. Look at this beauty right here. This is a Panasonic one. But as you see here, all of these little parts right, well, this is actually missing the button, believe it or not. These little red dots would show when they were scanning across, and these were crystal controlled. So what happened is that inside this radio here, you had 10 little slots, or is it, what time it is? It's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, there wasn't even 10, 8. And you would have a crystal in each one. And this switch up or down would determine if the frequency was locked in or out. Up was it was scanning, down means it wasn't scanning. So what would happen is if this was number 1, it was locked in, you'd see the red dot go dot, 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 because 3 And let's see, 5, 6, or 6, 7, and 8 were locked out of the scanning on there. So that's what would end up happening with a lot of these scanners. Like I said, you would actually put the crystal in there. And as a matter of fact, here, let me go back over to the website here again. Let me pull that up there. There you go. Look at this. Here you go. You have channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This happens to be a 10 channel scanner, okay? Now notice there is a L, an H, and a U. So usually what this meant is like low band. So there was basically the IO point, or the mixing point for the scanner. It was either for low band, which was usually like 49, 50 megahertz, okay? Then there was the H, which was high band, which was usually like our 140, 155, 154 area and everything like that on there. And then you had UHF, and the UHF was like 440, 450, maybe some 460s. You have to remember, though, that in the day, back in the day, that is, you really didn't have 800 megahertz, okay? So anything above UHF was like the top of the band. And even at that, some of these scanners, based on the controllers or the frequencies, would not even do anything above like 450, 460 and stuff like that on there. Like, I'm trying to think, NYPD, they were like 470s up into like the 500 megahertz band on some of the stuff there. They called it the UHFT band. In some cases, once again, here's 1996, it says it right here. I mean, we're dealing with crystals, basically tell you, plug the crystal in, VHF low, VHF high, UHF, and then go from there. And that would be your mixing order or your mixing point in regards to it. So that was kind of the cool part about scanning. That was kind of the cool part about crystals. Well, then what started to happen was we had an advancement in technology. And when we had that advancement in technology, what we started to do from that point then is we started to have actually non-crystal controlled scanners. So what would happen in those crystal controlled scanners, they were kind of going by to the bye-bye. And the reason they were doing that is because you basically started to say, hey, wait a minute, you have these VFO controlled scanners. Alrighty. And I'm going to pull up here, if I can find another picture of one. One of them that I had for the longest time, and maybe you guys probably are aware of it. I'm going to bring it up here. See if I can, here. Let's see if I can do it this way here. All right. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I'm using some pictures from Facebook and stuff. But here we go. Here's what it is. This was a direct entry programmable scanner. Direct entry. No more crystal controlled. No more crystal controlled whatsoever. All you simply did was enter the numbers on the keypad here. As a matter of fact, you'd press program. You'd go, well, first of all, you'd actually hit manual until you see. So channel 1 here, I'd push program, and then I'd enter whatever there. So 155.5500, hit enter. Boom. Now I would see 155.550. I'd hit enter. Now it's locked in there. Now I hit manual, go to channel 2. And I don't remember exactly how many this one has, but like on some of them, you were talking like, I got like 16 channels. Now I'm double those channels, okay? And Ape just popped in there. Yes, Ape, I'm going to say this may have been used in a smoking environment because, yeah, those buttons were probably white at one point in time. The display was probably a little bit better. But, here's the thing about it is that was now where we're getting it. Now, here's the interesting part. On here, some of them had a screw-in built antenna. So it was really cool because you just set this thing up, put this telescoping antenna up there, and then you had the scanner. That was it. And this was kind of one of the first ones that I actually delved into, that I really liked and had and played with a lot. And it was great. It was absolutely great. Now, I'm going to try to look for my other picture if the computer plays right for me. But then what happened is you started to look up and you started to get into these different things. And I'm trying to find the Uniden one I had. Uniden and Radio Shack had this weird partner relationship for a while. Uniden made a lot of scanners for Realistic under Realistic brand, which was Radio Shack back in the day, and there were a few on there. But I'm going to pull up the Uniden, and I'm not sure which one it was, but it was one of the early Uniden scanners. And with that early Uniden scanner, it allowed you to input a CTCSS board. And it was really, really amazing. I thought I just found it there. Oh, here it is. Uniden Bearcat. Now I'm just going to pull this picture up here again. Once again, credits are going to be given out. Let's see if I can pull it up. Come on. No, I can't. Okay. But I know which one it is. It's the 9000. So let me see if I can pull up another picture of a 9000. But now what happened is that you were able to take and put in a CTCSS board, which would now allow you to decode. Ooh, God bless RigPix. I'll tell you that much. Look at that baby. The Uniden UBC 9000 XLT. Now here's the cool part. So you could put, this had turbo scanning, this had priority scanning, this had a CTCSS board that you could actually put into it. And when you put the CTCSS board into it, you were then able to decode CTCSS tones. And now, if you had a department or agency that was using CTCSS, boom, you could actually decode that. In addition, it started to get to the point where you had a data button, and that data button would go ahead and kind of filter out if you were getting a data thing like paging. Now, mind you, when these were coming out, we're talking. I'm not even sure when it was. Anybody in the chat knows when this came out here. Let's see if RigPix goes ahead and says it. So RigPix here, give the shout out to them. They're helping there. All right, so 90s. So, okay, so in the 90s, there we go. It was on there. You had paging. Paging was really, really big, busy and big at that time. A lot of alphanumeric, a lot of POC-SAG paging, numeric paging, all those kind of things like that on there. But this thing was loaded. And here, I will say, because we're going to talk about Uniden scanners tonight here too, this is where they really started to say, hey, let's take a look at these right here. So you had this A through J button, and these were banks, or these were groups of them together. So it was really kind of cool because bank 1 was the A bank, but now you could really group things together. So if I wanted, like, let's say I wanted all my local stuff, my local PD, my local stuff, I could put that in A, and then the county stuff I could put on B, and then the statewide stuff, whatever, however you wanted to do that. And I see in the chat here a lot of people saying, that's a scanner I had, that's a scanner I had. Yeah, this thing was amazing, okay? Now, even better yet, you were starting to get into the search functionality here, which a lot of people still use, depending on what they're doing. You had just a whole bunch of different things in this scanner. This really took it up. So not only were we now doing basically non-crystallized scanning, okay, they were basically now taking and saying, hey, here's the deal. We're going to give you basically a VFO if you want to. So now, hey, instead of like on that other scanner, that one I showed you where it was direct entry, you had to know your frequencies. Now we took it one step further and said, hey, no. We're going to kind of give you a VFO or band scan if you want to do that. And now what you're going to be able to do here is you're going to be able to go through this process on there and do all that fun kind of stuff on there. So it was just really this amazing thing of how it's continued on. Now, if we start taking a look and digging into it even more, we're going to find out that there was really a lot of things that really started to come out. One of the first ones that I can actually remember, and I'm kind of taking a look on my list here of all my notes because there was a lot of stuff on here, but you could actually start to do LTR trunking. You could start to do all these kind of things that it was like, whoa, wait a minute here. The people are really starting to say, hey, we want more in trunking or for scanners. We want to be able to do trunking. We want to be able to do this and this and this. And then the next thing you know is all of a sudden scanners really started to evolve where they're at today. And if I can go ahead and take one more look at it here, and I'll get you in 1 second here. It was right before the Pro 96 series, I think is what it was on there. But they started to kind of start to take a look at things and really kind of saying, hey, here, I think it's the Pro 95. Here we go. Pro 95. Last time I'm going to go ahead and down memory lane. Pro 95 here. So here you had the scanner now that was going and basically doing all the way down to about 25 megahertz, going all the way up to about 1.3 gigahertz. And it was now getting into trunking. So now, as you saw here, you are starting to be able to listen to trunked radio systems, because now when these scanners are coming out, now when they're looking at it and it's starting to evolve, the radio systems are actually starting to evolve also too. So people were able to say, hey, wait a minute, this scanner here is this and this and this and this. And this was about the early 2000s. So this kind of was made like late 90s, early 2000s, but it was really a progressive scanner at its time because it was able to start doing some of these trunked radio networks, these things which were trying to optimize the radio band on there. Now, we had a big change in our thoughts. We had, as we're looking at the history of them, we're really had an issue. And this issue dates to, from what I can see on the internet, I'm going to put it that way, what I can see on the internet, it dealt with a congressman, and I really probably shouldn't say this because now I'll probably get banned, right? But it dealt with a congressman or something that happened where the scanners that were coming out there, they were opened up in a legal format, meaning they were able to scan the 800 megahertz bands. But the time scanning really became popular, we started to go ahead and see cell phones start to come on. So you could see a spike in like the mid 90s or so, like the late 80s, early 90s. Things just really went up. Just boom, scanning went up. Cell phones were there, and cell phones were not encrypted. Okay, they were 800 megahertz. They were not encrypted. Scanners could receive it legally. So what happened was that there was a conversation, a naughty conversation that may have taken place from research I can find out. And in this naughty conversation, maybe someone had a scanner, and maybe someone had a tape recorder, and maybe someone recorded this conversation, and maybe that got out somewhere. So immediately then this effect went into the effect saying we have to block out the 800 megahertz portion of scanners and receivers in the United States so that they cannot receive cellular transmissions. Not digital, because we weren't digital yet. We were still the bag phones that looked like you were calling an air support for an airstrike, okay? You know, you had the flip phones that were like, hey, how's it going? Hey, the big brick phones and everything. Right, those were all 800 megahertz analog. And people were having scanners, and people were listening to that. I can remember myself living in northern Wisconsin as a young kid, having a Radio Shack scanner. And I could tell you this, not only was it a scanner that was not illegally opened, but you could go ahead and monitor the cellular transmissions. And there were a few frequencies at that time that some of the cellular companies had in the LMR portion. And I remember 865, 9625, 864, 9625, 863, 8875. I mean, had them all in the back of my head because you'd take them, program into the scanner, and it was great. You were listening to them all. But that's when things started to happen, and that's where all of a sudden it was like, boom, hey, no more listening to scanners. And there was much rejoicing because now everybody can listen on scanners. Well, yes and no, because, just like I saw in the chat here, cordless phones were still in the 49 megahertz range about that time there too. So now people were saying, I got a scanner, I'm going to listen to cordless phones. And then all of a sudden we saw when that was starting to happen, whoa, wait a minute here, that wasn't working too well. People were listening to my conversations. So then cordless phones then went 900 megahertz instead of blocking that portion of there. And then it went up from there and continued on. They couldn't block the 49 megahertz portion because actually some like radios, like Radio Shack used little walkie-talkies that basically was like from here to 5 feet to my right, we could talk and listen. Otherwise it got too scratchy. But those kind of frequencies were in place, so you couldn't really go ahead and block it. And then in addition to that, they started to go ahead and have these issues of saying, hey, what else is going on Scannerlands? And that really kind of moved us into this weird area on there. So as we continued on, we're now at the point of having a really great thing, because now we are at like scanners like this. This is Uniden BCD 436 HP. You really want to get up into the creme de la creme. I really love this one personally. I'm not even begin to scratch the surface of this thing because it's so amazing. This is Uniden SDS 100. Now, the problems that we kind of run into about it, as we're coming full circle on history here, is that we used to have scanning manufacturers all over the place. You saw ones from Panasonic. You saw one from Uniden, which was basically, or Radio Shack, which was Uniden rebranded and stuff on there. But now we're kind of getting to the part where we're kind of running out of scanners. And when we type in scanners, and I'm going to use the HRO website. I'm just going to pull up there real quick. Pretty much all of your main radio people have scanners on there, but that's just by typing in the word scanner. So if you type in the word scanner doesn't do nothing. If you type in Uniden, you could see that there are multiple ones that are out there. They do have different ones out there, and they're really, really kind of becoming very versatile. Okay. Now I did type in Uniden, so it's going to also show some CBs and stuff like that on there. But as you can see, so you got the current SDR. Yes, these are SDR scanners. You have the Home Patrol series, which is basically a nice little easy to program thing. You have the BCD 536, 436. You have the other ones on there. You even have this little beauty right here, which is a Bear Tracker 885. So Uniden makes CBs also, but this is a combination CB radio and digital scanner. And we're going to be talking about CBs in a couple episodes down the road there. But now you see there's not really many scanners. There used to be Whistler. And if you type in Whistler, unfortunately, nothing's out there even more. Even if you type in Whistler scanners, I love Google searches. You type in Whistler scanners, there still are a few out there. But if you go to the website, they are somewhat limited, and you see that they're all sold out. Now, I don't know if they're sold out due to the fact that we're experiencing a chip shortage, or what we're exactly doing, or what the whole purpose is. But now it comes into a play of, well, I got to get a scanner. What can I get out there? Well, you really have two choices right now. You can either go with Uniden, or you can go with SDR scanners. And SDR scanners, I'll tell you this, are pretty amazing in regards to what they can do. And I'm sure someone can type, someone says Whistler Radio Shack. Okay, I'll type in Whistler Radio Shack real quick here and see what happens. Someone can tell me who did a show not too long ago talking about using SDRs there. Okay, here we go. Even with the Whistler. No, I don't need. No, we're not. Hey, let's track ourselves, right? Okay, so here's the Whistler scanner out of stock. So yeah, I don't know, but really these are all you got right now. You got Whistler and you got Uniden, and in those cases, that's kind of there. But if you really take a look at it, you can find and do a lot of SDR scanning stuff on there, and there's kind of two paths you can go with scanners. So you can do these kind of scanners. Uniden makes it, hey, program, blah, 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 beep, 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 boop, boop. Or you can actually go along the lines of doing something that is an SDR dongle. So I'm going to pull up here. Where's it at here? So here's one of them. You could do a direct sampling receiver depending on what you are actually scanning or looking for. So this is one example of it. These are just examples. We're not condoning or saying anything. I'm going to go to back here a little bit more, and I'm going to try to find these here. And I've played with these. These are pretty good also too here. The SDR plays. That allow you to do that. And with those SDR plays, you have the ability to do that, to basically make it and say, hey, here's the deal, here's what you're going in, and here's what you're doing, to say, hey, I like this. I like this kind of setup on there. They got two different things on there. Now, this is running basically a setup where you're looking at connecting it to a computer. So as you look here, ideal for crossband and duplex operation on there. So you can do that, but you're running that as a computer. So you're connecting that to a computer. It's not a standalone device. And once again, looking into it, I do know, and I do remember that if someone in the chat wants to, someone recently did a video on one of their YouTube channels or as a group that talked about scanning with like the dongles. So if anybody is on there, let me know, and we'll give you some credit for it on there. And yeah, but until then, if that doesn't pop up. But that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of where we're with the history of things. So just kind of, I know it's a little bit of a long history, but I think it's kind of an interesting history because we're doing that. Now, scanning has evolved into basically, I've seen squad cars. I've worked on squad cars that are putting these things in their squad cars to listen to other systems because they don't want to have multiple radios in there. So yeah, it's kind of one of those deals where it's like, it's really, really, really an amazing kind of aspect of things on there. But now let's get into the kind of the second part of the show, where's what to listen to. And I'll tell you what, I went to Mall of America because guess what? I can go to Mall of America and I wanted to feel what it's like to be in a prison. So I decided to walk around there one day, but I brought a handy dandy trusty little radio. And so I'm going to warn you, when you're walking around with scanners these days, you're going to get looked at kind of weird. That's okay. Don't be worried about it. Don't do those kind of things, because guess what? You're going to get looked at weird. You're going to get looked at weird. It's not a problem on there. But what can actually happen is that looking at scanning, a lot of public safety systems are unfortunately going to systems that are digital, that are trunked, and that are encrypted. And I'm not just talking back in the day, like before it used to be like law enforcement had an encrypted channel. I remember getting started in law enforcement. We had our normal channel. It was conventional, so repeater only, wasn't trunk, wasn't there. We had a couple different towers. We can go to central, east, and west towers, and then we could pick it up. And then if we needed to, we can go coded. That's what are coded. Or as the radio said code. On our radios, it was a 0 with a line through it, right? And what we could do is then we could talk encrypted. Well, that was like law enforcement, okay? And as that law enforcement stuff kind of happened, it was great. But then what started to happen is that instead of doing all this encryption, we started to go to a point where we started to say, hey, guess what? Now we're going up a level. Now we're going to go digital. And people thought, oh, by going digital, it's going to be encrypted. And then, people went along, hey, we got a digital scanner. Well, crap, that's not going to work. So now we're going to do, let's go trunked even. Let's go digital trunked. Guess what? We could still hear you. And then finally what happened? They said, you know what? We're flipping encryption, because encryption in digital is a lot easier. It doesn't even necessarily take boards. Sometimes it's built into the programming of the radio. You can program your computer, enter a code, boom, you're encrypted. And that was like, man, that sucks, because now what are we going to listen to? And so reason I bring this up is because, like, okay, Mall of America, they run a DMR, either capacity, I think it's a capacity plus or cap max system. I think it's capacity plus. DMR, it's 100% encrypted. You listen to it, 100% encrypted. Okay, fine. What can you listen to? Well, you can listen to a lot of the stores. And I will tell you, it's really, really interesting on what takes place in a mall. So I'm going to pull up this here. So this is on hfunderground.com is one of the websites that are on there. But a lot of different places run these business frequencies. You could still listen to a lot of these business frequencies on there. And in these business frequencies, this is what it is. So they do have some here. These are itinerants which means that they are pretty much used anywhere across the US and everything like that. Some are restricted to power outputs and everything like that on there. If you go ahead and scroll down, look at all the VHF frequencies that are out there. Alrighty, and they are interlaced with public safety channels also too, so don't be surprised in there. But, you know, basically there's 27 channels, including the itinerants, from here, okay, 151.505, all the way down, whoop, as I'm scrolling too fast here, there's about 27 of them right till you get to about here. Now, some of them, yes, are the merge channels. Some of them are the other channels that are involved that we know and stuff like that on there. But if you go, you look, plug these into your scanner. It's going to be a lot of interesting stuff that's going to take place. Now, these frequencies that I'm going to be looking on here, there's about 90 of them. And these are the UHF, and sometimes referred to as the UHF low power channels, okay? Now you're saying, John, there's a lot more than 90. Yeah, there is, because the GMRS channels now are interlaced. The FRS channels are also interlaced and everything like that, because now the FCC changed the rules. You can use FRS channels for business purposes and everything. But program these channels in, and you're going to hear an enormous amount of actual radio traffic on there. And, you know, some people are like, well, that's boring, okay? Listening to boring and stuff like that. Yeah, it is. And be honest with you, it isn't, because when you start to listen to some of these channels, like I said, I'll scroll up here. You start to listen to some of these channels, some of these workers, I don't think they realize that these are actual channels that people can hear, people can listen. And the best part about these is you look at it, they're 451 frequencies, so 451 megahertz, all the way up to 469 megahertz. All completely with most receivers. And when I say most receivers, I'm actually talking about scanners. And then I'm also talking usually about business radios, wherever I have my business radio over here. Business radios, or even amateur radios. They usually will do the split. As a matter of fact, some business radios, we used to do 450 to 470, and someone might do like 430 to 470, whatever the range might be on there. But yeah, you'd be surprised at what you hear on some of these things on there. In my Mall of America excursion, so I had my little radio, had a little tiny antenna on it, had a little sneak thing on there. I forgot to bring the earpiece so I could listen to it. But I was listening to all these UHF frequencies and stuff like that. And like I said, there were a couple conversations that were just absolutely hilarious. And when I mean hilarious, I mean absolutely hilarious. That were, you know, like, Cindy, can you go over to channel 2? I go ahead. Am I ever going to get my break today? I know, we've been so busy, right? And I'm just sitting there waiting for the family to get out of the bathroom. And I'm just sitting there listening to this kind of thing. And it's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. If you have a shopping plaza, you know, like a shopping mall or area, stuff that has a lot of little businesses or bigger businesses, you'd be surprised at how many of these people are using it. Now, what's even funnier is that people are using a lot of FRS and MERS radios. So what's happening is that they're going and just buying these FRS radios now that they're used for business. They don't really care. And now that they're 2 watts and stuff, works fine in their stores. So in some cases, you may not even have to go ahead and listen to these radios, but a lot of people use it. And that's kind of one part of the fun part of scanning. Now, let's talk about another big part of scanning. And this is actually a large crowd of people that I didn't really, or I'm not really aware about, is, believe it or not, rail fans. Okay? Rail fan scanners. And I know there's a couple of rail fans on there that like to listen to this kind of stuff like that. I think the Railroad Radio Network is an amazing piece of design and equipment. You know, up here, and I guess I'm not sure about other parts of the world, but up here in northern Wisconsin, over 500 miles away, near where I grew up, is the dispatcher sitting in an office talking to trains up here in Minneapolis and near Minneapolis. All the way down in the south suburbs of Chicago, they're talking through their communication system all the way, once again, up to people here, like just like easy the day. And if you listen to some of these things, it's like air traffic controllers, okay? Which is another big type of scanning group on there too. We'll get to that in 1 second. But like these rail fan stuffs, some of the coordination that takes place, some of the precision that takes place, some of the things that are doing, like they're talking back and forth and this and this and this and this. I mean, it's absolutely truly amazing how a lot of these things get done. In addition, there's been some incidences that I've been involved with from a standpoint of search and rescue, emergency operations, and stuff like that near railroad tracks, and calling, the people listening, and then you can hear where the trains are saying, I am stopped at mile marker, da 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 da. Well, we were smart. In the county, we listed out all the different mile markers of the train tracks. We knew where they were at. They were announcing this and this and this and this and this and this and this. But the railroad traffic scanning is absolutely kind of interesting and absolutely kind of amazing. It really, truly is. You can also kind of see how they are dealing with weather too, because I've listened to a few times up here, because I'm literally, where I live, I'm literally like 7 blocks away from the railroad tracks. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 10. But, their transmitter is right near where I can easily see. And you listen to it, and you'll just be like, yeah, we're having it, like, how's the weather hitting there? Oh, track conditions are good and stuff. And the way the system is going, you may not hear the train, but you might hear the dispatcher, because the dispatcher might be there. But, okay, that's rail. Sorry, back on point. So rail scanning is kind of very interesting on there, too. Let's talk about another type of scanning on there, air traffic. Air traffic scanning, I'll tell you, that is quite interesting. And the traveling that I've done and everything like that, I've tried to listen to it. One, I don't know what the hell they're saying, just because, like, there's so much going on. There is arrival frequencies, there is departure frequencies, there is runway frequencies, there is general air traffic control frequencies, there is weather broadcast onto these frequencies. They are in the VHF band, they are up in the 300, 400 megahertz band. I mean, they're just all over the place. And I'll tell you what, I need to find a local mentor or someone I can talk to about aircraft frequencies, because it's interesting to hear them. I mean, I'll scan them like, oh, what's that one? Oh, what's that one? Oh, what's that one? Oh, what the hell? Okay, oh, what's that one? Okay, I don't know what that is, but hey, that sounds interesting. It's playing something, but that's about it. But that's another big kind of group of scanning listeners on there. I guess the biggest thing is if you got a scanner, put it in that search mode. Like I showed you on the unit, it had a search mode. Let's put it on that search mode on there. Marine traffic, another really, really great one to listen to. I always have some of the common marine channels stored away in my radio for listening, not just a scanner, but in my actual two-way radios in my car that I like use for public safety, because we are close to the river here where I live. And you never know when a marine traffic thing is going to be used, or you never know when you're going to need to coordinate with marine things or do stuff like that. Marine radio traffic listening is pretty big. Now, the nice thing about marine traffic and rail listening traffic is they're channelized. The railroads have a list of channelized railroad frequencies, and then the marine channels are channelized, and they have a list of channelized frequencies on there. So that kind of moves us into the next kind of thing as part of it, is basically going ahead and taking a look at it. Where can I go to get frequencies, John? How do I know what's going on there? So here is a website. I do not work for RadioReference.com. I do not receive any support from RadioReference.com. I just want to make that clear. This is RadioReference.com. It is a very popular website here. I'm going to actually go ahead and make it a full screen on there. But as you can see, they have up at the top here, home, databases, live audio, forums, so you can actually chat about things, listen to live audio. We're going to click into databases here, and now you have a whole map of the entire United States. And in here, you'll see if it's green, that means they've had an update to something within the last 24 hours. If yellow means it's an update in the last week, and gray means nothing. So I'm going to go to my home state here, Wisconsin, take a look at it, and voila. See a couple things. So there's been updates to Milwaukee, and last week was Waukesha, Chippewa Falls, Eau Claire. And you could take a look at it. And Radio Reference is really cool because as you scroll down, you could see what was updated. So, oh, look at that. Eau Claire School District was updated, and then the Wiscom statewide system was updated. So if I want to see what happened with Wiscom, we'll go ahead. I'm going to tell you talk groups updated. Look at that. Canadian Pacific Railway. I bet that's probably the railroad police. Okay. We go ahead and take a look at there, and you can scan down, and then you just take a look for what was yellow. But this is where you can find things to listen. Hey, what sort of talk groups are available in the Department of Corrections for the Milwaukee site? Or, hey, let's go ahead and da-da-da-da-da-da. Anyways, whatever you want to look at, Radio Reference is actually a pretty good site on there. So let me go ahead and exit back on there. We'll go back. But taking a look at this, this is some of the stuff that you can actually listen to. So I'll just go through and show a couple things here real quick to kind of help people understand this. Once again, received no compensation from it, just using it as a reference point. So as you can see here, when you see it says FMN, so under the mode, you can even put on there, FMN means that it is a FM signal. Alrighty. If you see it says DMR, that means it is a DMR signal. And here it gives you the color code, the talk group, the slot number. FM is going to give you the PL tone or the DPL tone if they have it. And then as you see here, P25 is going to give you the P25 frequency. It's going to tell you it's in P25 operation on there. So just a couple things to look at here, but you're, trying to figure out, hey, what do we listen to? So here, we'll go back in Eau Claire. Hey, I want to find out what's going on in, we'll even go back further. Let's go back to great old Minneapolis. Here you go, Minneapolis. They had some updates for Carver, but I'm going to see what's going on in good old Hennepin County, Minnesota. Now, Hennepin County, for example, some places, some states might be using different systems. So in this case, actually, if you look at it, all agencies are on Armor. So they're using their statewide system. So this is going to come into where you need to figure out what kind of scanner you're going to have. Because they're all in 800s. They're all P25, of course, but they're digitally trunked. But here's where it gets into all the frequencies you need to do. So I'm going to kind of give you some rough pointers and stuff like that on there so you're kind of aware and saying, hey, here's what it is. So for an example, you see these here? These are statewide interoperability talk groups. And guess what? As you look at it here, you see D obviously means digital for the mode, but then what happens is E is encrypted. And that's what's happening. There's a lot of encryption starting to take place. Okay? When it's starting to take place, that's kind of the problem. That's where scanning can really be kind of like crap. I didn't really want to go ahead and do that. So, or, why did they do that? Because now I can't listen to them. But what you want to do is when you are programming, and I'm just kind of scrolling through a list to show you on systems how many different talk groups and how many things are actually put into there. But here's what you want to do. When you're sitting down and you're thinking about programming a scanner, take your time to really look at and research what's going on. Don't be afraid to ask questions. All right. If you take a look here, I'll even go back to the one spot here that will show you good group of there. Let me go back over to the website here. Go under forums. When you go under forums here, there's a lot of different things on here. So don't be afraid if you're like in the US or something. Hey, you want about specific scanners we talked about? Hop in one of the forums. All righty. Different types of specific monitoring. There you go. Aircraft monitoring, federal monitoring, marine, military, railroad, storm spotting, all that jazz. And then once you start getting through there, you're going to hit that section, which is going to start talking about states. And then you can find out and post questions in there. So Minnesota, we were just in there. Hey, there are people that are talking about things related to this. Talking about usage of the Armor server on an internet, Sibley County stuff, Metcom stuff, all this kind of stuff. People can get in there and ask. The only thing that's going to limit you as a scanner listener is basically saying, what do I have for a device? So do I have a device that could be trunking and can do all these fun things? Do I need a scanner that's going to be more capable to have a better reception, a better ability? Yes, I do have the plastic on here because I'm kind of a nerd like that, okay, for screen protector. That's going to limit what you can listen to or what you should listen to. Then you need to go one step further. Now you need to take a look at it and saying, listen, here's what I need to do. What is out there? What can I hear? How do I need to program it? How do I program a trunk system? How do I do that? That's something that's going to be more in depth on there, because what ends up happening in that case is that when you start to dive into those things, it's going to really be dependent upon the scanner you're using or how you're using it. Some people may be able to use SDR and plug it into a USB drive or USB kind of hub and make their own scanner with software. That's great. Other people just want a simple and easy thing on there. But don't be afraid to look what's out there for scanning. And when it comes into programming, don't be afraid to sit down and saying, I want to listen to this. 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 And then start to do your research. Start to do it. You know, back in the days, we were spoiled by police call books. They're gone now, unfortunately. Now you have things like radio reference. Now you have things like maybe local scanner groups. Maybe you have, chat boards on the websites. Okay. One last thing I'm going to talk about scanners real quick before we move on. Be careful with the laws of your state. Believe it or not, there are some laws that require you, if you are not, say, a licensed amateur radio operator, you may need to actually get a permit for a scanner. That's correct. You may have to actually go have a background check done in order to get a scanner and carry a permit with you if you're going to be listening to the scanner in a car. Some states usually say if you're an amateur radio operator or if you're in the business of two-way communications or something like that, then what can happen is you're kind of grandfather, you're kind of okay on there. But do check with your laws. Why is that? Because guess what? There are some people who use scanners for commissions of crimes. And guess what? That is a major illegal offense. If you use a scanner in the commission of a crime, you're probably going to get tagged really bad on there. It's going to just add things on there taking place. Now we come to the part of the show. You know what really bends my antenna? You know what really bends my antenna is the perception that we get when we are scanner users. And the reason we get a perception with scanner users is because, guess what? There are some people who do not like to use a scanner. They want to use a radio. The problem that comes into this is that the actions of some people can actually really cause great issues for us that are law-abiding on there. Lots of digital trunked radio systems now require that your radio affiliate to their system. Meaning if you have a radio and you turn it on a program for a trunked radio system, it is going to try to talk to that system, and that system is going to try to see, hey, can I be on the system? Can I not? Now, there's a lot of people that do use a radio for scanning. Even in my commission as doing public safety stuff, I have frequencies in there that I cannot transmit on, but I can listen for this, basically the sole purpose of interoperability. I can hear what's going on my law enforcement channel so that when law enforcement is on the scene before me, they can give radio updates to dispatch. I can hear them. Can I talk to them? Not necessarily. But when you are trying to use a radio as a scanner and it is connected to a system and you are listening to that system, even in my mind, I would be like, hey, do they have a radio that can be on that system on there? What's going to happen about it is that the education of scanners is crap, okay? Law enforcement officers do not necessarily know about scanners. They know about radios, but they don't know about scanners. And I'm not saying every law enforcement officer, I'm not clumping everybody in there, but this goes for firefighters, EMTs, anybody that deals with radios or needs a radio to be able to communicate. If they see a scanner on there, such as like something like this, they're going to be like, oh, it's a scanner, who cares? Oh, Unidad, I'll go look at it. Oh, they make scanners. But the minute that someone's going to go ahead and walk by and see someone carrying around a Motorola radio, a Kenwood radio, an E.F. Johnson, an ICOM, Harris, whatever radio, and is receiving law enforcement stuff, and you're not law enforcement, you're not public safety, you're not involved somehow, some way, guess what? That makes people go ahead and say, someone's going to be hacking with my system. And that is what's actually causing a lot of agencies to go and move to encryption, to move to digital trunk systems, to move to these systems that are not necessarily making it foolproof or bulletproof, but are really going to make it hard for people to get on and hack their system. I could tell you personal experience if I've been involved with these conversations and having these things where we're sitting at a table and saying, you know what? Do we need to go encrypted? Do we need to go to digital trunk? Do we need to go to these different systems because we're worried about A, the casual user listening to us, and B, the casual user interfering with us? Anytime I've seen numerous people, anytime people have asked me, hey, John, you got a radio and stuff like that on there. I want to get a radio to listen. I tell them, you are foolish and you are stupid, my friend. And here's why. A radio is going to cost you twice as much, 3 times maybe as much on there, But you know what? You're going to be able to get a scanner for $300 or $400. Yes, you're going to do that. Well, why would I buy a scanner that much? Well, why would you want to buy a $1,000 radio just to be act as a scanner? Scanners are more apt. They're more able to do things. If you buy a Motorola digital P25 radio, you're only going to be able to do P25 and digital. If you buy a Motorola DMR radio, you're going to be the same thing. If you buy a Kenwood NextM radio, you're only going to be able to do those. With scanner technology these days, folks, not only can you get wideband coverage receivers, but you can listen to analog, to P25, to Open Sky, to DMR, to NextN, to everything underneath the sun. Granted, it might cost you a little money to do those upgrades, but guess what? You can listen with it to a scanner. So my theory on this is that we have sort of become a victim of our own circumstance by going ahead and saying, you know what, I want to carry a radio to be a scanner, instead of just saying, hey, you know what, let's buy a scanner. And that kind of goes ahead and acts to the thing of, are you doing it just to be a whacker? I'm sure that probably triggered a few people, and that's how I'm going to end this week's segment of, you know what really bends my antenna? So thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Communications Cigars. I hope it was a good one for you. Scanner listening is always something that's very interesting to do, to fun. Once again, it's not just about public safety. There's a whole realm of different things that are on there for listening and stuff like that on there. I will tell you, I have more fun sitting on my porch in the summertime, having a cigar, thinking of next week's episode or whenever it was, and going ahead and sitting and saying, you know what? I wonder who's talking on what today. And I can hear on a scanner everything from the farmers to the police to the whatever. So scanning is fun. Don't be afraid to do it. As a matter of fact, it's kind of sort of a gateway technology to get into things like ham radio or more about communications. Once again, if you have any questions, ideas, are you a CB expert? Are you some other experts or something like that? Please hit me up for an email. I'm always looking for people to help come on my show and talk to me about things. Once again, I know a lot, but I don't know it all. Don't tell my wife that, because I've told her different. So until next week then, everybody, stay safe. If you got a cigar, sit back and enjoy it. The weather hopefully is getting better in some areas there, so we'll be able to get back outside soon. And until then, we'll see you on next week's episode.